truth is UW more likely to lose their coach. Jedfish isn't committed to UW. Huskies be looking for a new coach next season. Oh, I don't think so. Lanning is not legit source to be a number one target for Oh, I totally disagree. I think I have talked to enough people. I think, you know what the issue is at Oregon is, and we can get into it. I think when you look at Dan Lanning, I don't think he was the first name on their list at LSU. No doubt about it. The issue with Dan Lanning is he's pretty much made it known that it will cost the entire U.S. Mint to get him to leave Oregon to go to LSU. And immediately what that does is that puts Oregon in a position to ask, well, then how bad do you really want the job? Because I think Oregon's in a position here where they cannot take a risk.
LSU.
It's why, what's that?
LSU,
I'm sorry, is in a position where they cannot take a risk. And it's why, as we reported first right here on this show, they're not going to include coordinators in their first round of targets. You're not going to see the Garrett Rileys or the Will Steins in those conversations right now. And I think there is no question you're going to see. I still maintain that they have already tested the water on Nick Saban. They are, and I think what LSU's strategy here, I don't even think this is breaking news or rocket science. They are going to take a medium size, not a small, not an extra long, but a medium size U-Haul truck and fill it with $100 bills. And they're going to park it on Nick Saban's driveway. And I think they're going to say to Nick Saban, hey, might want to go to Miss Terry because we got to have a conversation now. He's going to say no. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He's going to say no. The problem for Dan Lanning is when you go about it the way that Dan Lanning has allegedly gone about it, which I am told is, hey, pay me $1 gazillion and we can have a conversation. They're not going to, that is to me, that says you don't want the job. You don't value LSU. And I think if you're LSU, you can't take the risk. And Dan Lanning's in this very precarious spot where I think he knows he has it really good at Oregon. I think he knows it's comfortable at Oregon. But I think Dan Lanning wants to coach in the SEC. I've heard repeatedly from multiple sources that Dan Lanning would have taken the Alabama job if it wasn't replacing Nick Saban. And I've talked about that. I talked about it at the time I was told that. I had a conversation with a guy the other day who said Dan Lanning would have loved to have taken that job. He's got ties to the SEC. He's got ties to Georgia, Bama, the South. Like, he is the absolute right guy. I think the issue is Dan Lanning has it really easy in Eugene. There's not a lot of pressure on him as far as a college coach is concerned. And right now, being a college coach is very miserable. There's not a lot of pressure on Dan Lanning because they've won enough. He's brought in talent, to be sure. To go from Oregon to LSU, I mean, you're basically going from your feet up on the sofa to walking through hot coals every day for a living. And I think there's probably hesitation in Dan Lanning to do that because he has a very easy existence at Oregon. He is the king of the castle. He is paid very well. And it's interesting. I don't know how much money it would take, but I do believe that LSU is going to make an exorbitant offer to somebody. I think they will pay somebody $15 to $17 million a year to coach that football team next year. And if Dan Lanning says no to $15 to $17 million a year to stay at Oregon, who is going to call him? No, the next time a big job comes up, next time Alabama's open, and that's probably now multiple years, I would think, especially if Ty Simpson wins the Heisman. it'll be multiple years because I think Kalen DeBoer is doing a hell of a job. But if you're Alabama and Dan Lanning didn't want the LSU job, I think people will begin to question how much Dan Lanning wants to coach at the very top of college football.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no doubt that that's part of the conversation. I also think that, it's important to understand that, I'm assuming that Oregon is going to match, or raise his pay depending on the offers that he will get, obviously. So there's this dynamic at play where Dan, in a sense, is going to get paid either way. Not obviously as much as he'd get paid at LSU, but there's value to, hey, I've already got a good setup. I'm just going to get a raise here and we'll be fine. And everyone always wants to spin it as, Dan and his family and, doesn't want to move his family. And that, he's just really like set up in Eugene and he is. I'm sure he is, dude. I'm sure that it's nice. But I think that you just have to be careful here if you're Dan to not come off like, frankly, like, an arrogant a-hole about it, right? Like, hey, I'm not even going to consider it unless it's just, out of this world money. I think that while I understand that on some level, I think you have to be careful not rubbing people the wrong way and sending the wrong message, because I don't think that Dan, just based on, what we see of him in the media and on the sidelines and, just knowing his personality a little bit, like, I don't think that Dan is the guy that's looking for, cushy per se. I think that he does have it comfortable in Eugene. But I think what Dan, doesn't want to do is take a risk in going to LSU when he already has access to everything at Oregon. And
see, I don't think he has access to. I don't think he has access to everything. He's got
national championship access. It's on him to go and get the talent. He has access to a national championship.
I think recruiting to Eugene, and again, conversations I have seriously asked two angles of this Dan Lanning question. Because the one thing that Oregon fan has routinely said is, oh, well, we've got Nike money. LSU's got far more resources financially than Nike money. Money is not going to be the overwhelming factor. He's going to get paid at Oregon and he's going to get paid at LSU. The money is not even a conversation, right? Because remember, he's not an NFL guy. So it's not like LSU has to send draft picks, right? This is a financial deal. Every coach has a buyout. There's reasons for that. It is what it is. The money is not going to be the issue here. What I'm telling you is there is a low level of belief that if Dan Lanning leaves Oregon, that they can recover from that loss. And I think that when we talk about access and winning a national championship, Oregon's had a ton of talent, but never enough talent. And what's Dan Lanning's biggest problem right now? As good of a recruiter as Tosh Lupoi is, as good of a recruiter as Dan Lanning is, as two of the best defensive minds in college football, what's their biggest problem right now? They don't rush the quarterback. So he's got the offense, right? He's got the quarterback. He's, by most accounts, got the offensive line. Does Dan Lanning have the ability to recruit the top defensive talent in the country to Eugene, Oregon?
If you asked him that question, I think he would say yes. I do.
If you ask my mom if I'm cute, she's going to say yes. Right?
But, I mean, if we're talking about where Dan's going to go, right? If we're talking about what the right decision is, I think it's important to understand that, hey, well, Dan is obviously the one making the decision. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a lot easier to get talent to LSU than it is to Oregon. I really don't even think that that's that controversial of a conversation. I don't think that it's hard to understand why it would be easier to get kids to go to Baton Rouge than it would be to go to Eugene. I just don't think that that's that hard to understand. And the problem is that what I believe Dan is doing is Dan is saying, okay, well, yeah, obviously the money's going to be there either way. Okay, cool. But beyond that, hey, I'm Dan Lanning. We got to the CFP, but we got our doors blown off by Ohio State. Not a competitive performance on our part, and that's on us as coaches or whatever. Cool. But if Dan really looks at his football program and understands where they are, it should be a very concerning and like, shot over your bow type situation that Indiana came to your place and made you look soft. They made you look weak. They pushed you around. They ran on you. They did anything they wanted to do against your defense. And so the only real question here is Dan's belief in his ability to get kids to come to Eugene. And if Dan believes that, he can win a national championship at Oregon, and maybe his mindset is, hey, well, it's, I'm not going to leave unless it's, Bama or whatever opportunity it is. And that, I guess, is not LSU. Then it's going to be difficult for LSU to get him. And he's probably going to rub people the wrong way in the SEC because I think most people are in your camp that LSU is a better opportunity. And that's what I think is difficult, is that, it's like these guys have their mindsets about their situation. And it's like, how do you get him out of that besides paying him a lot of money?
Because it's that it is, with all due respect, I just don't think that's a conversation that's happening. I think Dan Lanning doesn't view Oregon as a place where he needs to leave. But if it's just you, Dan Lanning, and a couple glasses of Irish whiskey, Dan Lanning could go to LSU and win a national championship. I have no doubt about that. I don't believe he can win a national championship at Oregon. I think it is lightning in a bottle with how much money is being spent. And you look at LSU's football roster is $20 million deep? That's a coaching problem. They don't have a talent procurement problem. They have a coaching problem. They had and I hate this word, culture problem. Brian Kelly was a problem. Dan Lanning comes in there. He immediately fixes that. But the problem is, I don't think Dan Lanning wants that challenge. I don't. I think whoever takes that job, and I think after what I've heard today, I think it's Lane Kiffin. They're all in on Lane Kiffin. I think if Lane Kiffin goes to LSU, they are instantly a national championship caliber program a year from now, right now. Next October 28th, LSU will be, because he's going to portal. He's already shown you Lane Kiffin's a dominant portal coach. He's already, whether it's Jackson Dart, whoever you want to point to. He is a dominant recruiter, he's a dominant talent evaluator, and Lane Kiffin understands the South. That's what you need at LSU. Dan Lanning's the guy who should get that job. Dan Lanning, I don't think, wants that challenge. And I'm disappointed in that, because Oregon fans are going to tell you, well, we have the money. Anybody telling you they have the money is grasping at straws, because they know they don't have the talent. And I 100% believe location is why Oregon will not win a national championship, will not consistently contend for a national championship. I think in a one-off universe, Oregon can win a national championship. Yeah, but I also wonder if Dan Lanning were to leave Oregon, who replaces him? I don't know either, because I think that is a very challenging job. And I think we saw it with Mario Cristobal. I think there was shock when Mario Cristobal left Oregon. Oregon did not see that coming. I don't believe Oregon saw that coming from the folks I've spoken to. I don't think they believed that Mario Cristobal would leave. And he left. And not only did he leave, he went to a program that they viewed as a step down at Miami. Rightly, wrongly, whatever that might be. They viewed Miami as a step back. And the problem is now Mario Cristobal has Miami in a much better position than Dan Lanning has Oregon. Mario Cristobal is closer to a national championship than Dan Lanning is today. That's just facts. It's hard to argue that. Now, he's also in the ACC, but isn't the ACC a much more difficult path to the college football playoff right now than is the Big Ten? I mean, I would have to say it is, because you look at what Virginia's done, you look at where Louisville is, you look at where Miami is, right? Like it's not an easy road to the college football playoff in the ACC. And I think Mario Cristobal's done a better than expected job of getting Miami to this position much more quickly than anybody thought. And I think the biggest issue is when you look at Tech, Georgia Tech, obviously, Virginia, who's third in that league right now? I want to say that it's Louisville. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody, but here, no, there. Oh, Pitt. I'm forgetting Pitt.
Yeah.
You look at that league right now. Miami's not in first place. Miami's not in second place. And frankly, until Louisville loses another game, Miami's not in third place. But they're on the doorstep of the college football playoff. That's the harsh reality that Oregon fans simply don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I guess I think what I think is hard with that is that Dan's already been and Mario is still trying, right? I mean, we can't just ignore that. I know he got his doors blown off again. I'm not, it wasn't even competitive.
That's
but,
one way to say it.
I mean, you got embarrassed. Let's just be real. But I don't know. I mean, they're not like super far off in the rankings. Miami's at 10 right now. Oregon's 6. I mean, it's not like you're miles apart. Oregon's got their 7th win. You're obviously going to be looking for that here next week.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. I largely feel about this conversation. Like, I agree with you that people view the LSU job as a better job. Like it's the SEC. Like,
do you?
I do. Because it's the SEC. I think if you win in the SEC, it's the pinnacle of the sport. With all due respect to the Big Ten, and I love what Ryan Day's done. I think Ryan Day has done an incredible job recovering from the "hey, we need to fire Ryan Day" chapter in his tenure there. And obviously, going and winning that national championship is just incredible work. But I think that if you come out of the SEC, you win the conference, and then you go and win a national championship, it's another level up. And so I guess it does come down to what path Dan wants to take and what challenge he's looking to take on, because I don't view Dan as someone who is certainly avoiding any type of challenge, but it does come to my mind, like, dude, at what point do you say, yeah, like, I would have more access to bodies in Baton Rouge? Because that's what this comes down to. I mean, Dan is 39. He does get out coached sometimes. I think that's what happened in the Indiana game.
Everybody gets out coached sometimes. Dan Lanning is a really good recruiter. But this is the same thing I'll say about Penn State. It's very difficult. You live in Eugene. I don't have to explain this. It's very difficult to overcome Eugene when you're talking about millions of dollars. Do I want millions of dollars to play at Death Valley, or do I want millions of dollars to play at Autzen? When I get the same gear and I get, like, there's no question that LSU is a better experience all around for a college football player than Oregon is. That's not saying Oregon sucks. It doesn't. That's not saying Autzen sucks. It doesn't. We've both been to Autzen. You're well aware of the game day environment there. But if you're going to drop me for LSU and Alabama in Death Valley on a game day, a night game in Baton Rouge, forget it. There's not a conversation to be had. What I'm telling you is it's a much easier, I think, aggregation of talent in Baton Rouge than it is in Eugene. And I think Dan Lanning is acutely aware of the current culture that coaches exist in college football, which is win right now or we're going to fire you.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying Brian Kelly $800,000 a month not to coach football. Let that sink in. $800,000 a month not to coach football.
If you're Dan Lanning, is that an environment you want to put yourself in, given the environment you're in now?
And I don't know how you can say that it's a different answer. Because again, and this is the best about Oregon and the worst about Oregon. It's a very good job. You're not likely to get fired, but you're also not likely to win a national championship. It's the reality of it. You got your ass kicked by Indiana, and not closely. They manhandled you. They took you in the alley and they beat the hell out of you.
Yeah.
And you had nothing. And again, did it end their season? No, because it's the Big Ten. But right now, you need help to get to the college football playoff. That is simply the reality. And what is Oregon, 6th in the country right now?
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you look at Oregon's schedule, Oregon's got they're at Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and Washington. Those are 4 games that I would expect Oregon to win. And I just am curious, how does 21-7 over Wisconsin happen? Well, Dante Moore, you worry about his health a little bit now. And, how do you only throw for 132 yards? Well, that's why you only scored 21 points. I worry about that a little bit. I worry about the fact that you don't get after the quarterback's ass. But worry about that a little bit. I worry about that USC game, specifically because you don't get after the quarterback's ass.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in the backfield. You're not a tackle for loss team. And when you look at that game, and I understand it's 3 weeks away or whatever, 4 weeks away at this point, 3.5. I think it's the week of Thanksgiving. I'm a little worried about that game. I am. That's at home. It is a massive football game. I cannot say it enough. That is the game that will likely determine one of those two teams' fates. Because at 5-2, SC has no more room for error. You lose again, and they're at Nebraska Saturday. Like, it does not get any bigger than this for SC. And then Northwestern, Iowa, and then you're at Oregon. So you've got massive games coming. Dan Lanning had better bury USC. Because if he does, you feel like they have a really good chance. If he doesn't, you feel like this is going to be another also-ran season at Oregon. And that would be very frustrating. But hey, let's get your comment sections. What do you guys think? Which job would you rather have, Oregon or LSU? I think it depends on what your mental state is, frankly. For me, I'd rather have the LSU job. I want to win national championships regularly. I want to build dynasties. I'm not saying that that's not where Dan is, but it does not seem like he's all in on going to. When you allegedly say to LSU, hey, it's going to take ungodly money to get me to be your head coach, that tells me you don't want to be the head coach at LSU.
Yeah, maybe he's waiting for another opportunity, or maybe he just simply doesn't want to leave. Who knows?
I think that's very interesting. Big Pun, if BK is it's never me, that's the problem. It's always someone else. Well, that's true. When he left Notre Dame, I was ecstatic. He can eat a bag of herpes infested you-know-whats. Okay. And, it's interesting. I love Notre Dame passionately. I want to make love to Notre Dame nightly. Too much? Probably too much.
Yeah.
The point is, you have to understand that Notre Dame is not a job where there's a lot of pressure. Because, like, for instance, everybody saw Marcus Freeman. LSU's got to call Marcus Freeman. For what? Marcus Freeman just signed a huge contract after last season that will keep him tied to South Bend for 5.5 more years. And Marcus Freeman has proved nothing. Marcus Freeman is a risk. LSU ain't taking a risk. LSU is going to hire somebody. And that's why I think it's either Nick. At this point now, I believe it'll be Nick Saban or Lane Kiffin.
And I think Lane Kiffin would be a home run. Obviously.
I think either Nick Saban or Lane Kiffin would be an absolute moonshot.
I would just be
And
really surprised if Nick came out of retirement, dude.
if you pay Nick Saban $20 million a year for the next 3 years to be the head coach, and you cultivate his replacement,
Yeah.
that's a deal I would make if I'm the governor of Louisiana. I'm making the deal that puts Nick Saban on the sideline.
Ferrari to Baton Rouge.
And we can do a coach in waiting type thing, right? Like, I'm willing to do that. I am willing to do that. I just, LSU can't take a risk here. You just can't. You have had a run here where your coaching hires have not been good. The Ogeron situation into Brian Kelly, I think, and this is not shocking, I think Brian Kelly was an abject failure at LSU. It was a terrible hire. He was the wrong guy at the wrong time, and you paid him anyways. And it feels like, this is just my opinion, nobody's told me this, it feels like Brian Kelly was looking for an escape from Notre Dame, and LSU was his escape hatch. That's what it feels like to me. And I'm with Brandon. Again, I'm a passionate Notre Dame fan. Get the hell out. Brian Kelly, legit. Brian Kelly is a low-end P4 or any G5 program. He would be fine he'd be fine at a UCLA. He'd be fine at he'd be a great hire for Oregon State. He'd be a great hire for any G5 university.
Boise State.
Yeah, but I don't want to tie Brian to jobs that aren't open, but he'd be fine at any G5. But you put him in a situation where he's got to build relationships and he's got to ingratiate himself, that ain't going to happen. And again, it's the same thing. If you listen to the alumni bases at Notre Dame and LSU, it's like they all talked and wrote a script together. Brian Kelly doesn't want to ingratiate himself. Brian Kelly doesn't care about history. He wants to write his own history. He doesn't want to talk about this or that. It's Brian Kelly. Look what Brian Kelly did for LSU. Look at all the games we won at Notre Dame. Well, you didn't win the biggest ones. That's why Dan Lanning's such a great coach. Because Dan Lanning never makes it about Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning is always talking about his players, current and former. Dan Lanning is always talking about his coordinators. Dan Lanning is always talking about history. He's always talking about tradition. He's always talking about... It's why Oregon is so fortunate to have hired Dan Lanning. Because he's what you want in a football coach. And he wins games. Now, did that happen in the playoff? No. Did that happen against Indiana? No. But if Notre Dame was looking for a coach and Dan Lanning was the hire, I would jump for joy. Mm-hmm. Because he's a phenomenal coach. He is a really, really good coach. Miami has all the talent, but still loses because you don't have a quarterback there. And I know my guy Rock and Rant wholeheartedly disagrees with me. I've warned you about Carson Beck. Cristobal brought a lot of talent to Oregon, kept losing the important games because and again, Oregon Duck fan, please don't lose your mind. The problem in Oregon is there's a glass ceiling. Because you don't have tradition. It's not like you've consistently won and you've won championships and we've done this and we've done that. The uniforms are great. Phil Knight's cool. I get all the Jordans I want. Yeah, I get all that at every other university too. Right? And I continue to tell you this. Go look at the swag they get at UCLA. Is there any university that does better in swag than UCLA right now? There's really not. There's a couple. Oregon, North Carolina, Florida, and UCLA all have unbelievable gear. And you begin to understand it's not about the money for the kids because they're all getting paid no matter where they sign on the dotted line. And it ain't like Oregon's not paying people. Yeah. Right. It's not like they're They're out of money. That's
Yeah, they're
nothing
not
could be
taking the Matt
further
Campbell
from the
approach.
truth. Right? Yeah. Nobody's taking a pay cut. None of that. Do players get in trouble off the field at Oregon? No. Do they get great education? Yes. Do they get great Jordans? Yes. Are they on national TV? Yes. Why the fuck don't they win? Because the best talent's not going to Eugene, Oregon. It's not an indictment on Oregon. It's not an indictment on the Ducks or Phil Knight or Dan Lanning. It is what it is. They'd rather go to Baton Rouge. They'd rather go to Gainesville. They'd rather go to Los Angeles and Westwood. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Is it's no slight. It just is the reality of where Penn State's located. Penn State and Oregon are they in the exact same situation? Why can the knuckle deep boys get so far but not far enough? Because nobody wants to go play there.
So if you're Dan Lanning,
talent.
If you're Dan Lanning, then what are you supposed to do about that? Are you just supposed to, coach the hell out of it, do everything you can, and be good if you don't win at Oregon? Because at some point, I would think a guy like Dan Lanning is going to be hell-bent on winning a national championship. Not that he's not at this point already, but just, when you look at the history of the program.
But it's funny. One of the guys I talked to today about this Lanning LSU situation, because make no mistake about it, LSU would hire Dan Lanning if Dan Lanning wanted to be hired. I have no doubt that if Dan Lanning wanted that job, it would come down to Lane Kiffin versus Dan Lanning. I have no doubt about that. But the problem for Dan Lanning is this will be the second marquee job opening that he said no to. Alabama and now LSU. And I think it's a legitimate question. I understand. Again, I will buy the bullshit going on about, hey, I didn't want to replace Nick Saban.
And I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people understand that.
It makes perfect sense. What's your excuse for not going to LSU? Because now the question has to be asked, do you want to jump into the absolute skin-peeling hot water that is the SEC? Because you don't have the hammer that he's got. He owns the West Coast in recruiting. It is him and Lincoln Riley routinely run into each other on the West Coast. And Dan wins, and Lincoln's got the number one class in the country, right? Dan Lanning's a phenomenal recruiter. So why wouldn't you go to LSU? Because it kind of feels like you don't want the heat. And that's kind of what people are asking. Because everybody is, I think there's no question. LSU wants to talk to Dan Lanning. I think when you and I was told today, if you're just tuning into the show, I was told today that Dan Lanning has told LSU it is going to take an astronomical amount of money to get him to take that job. And LSU's reaction, according to my sources, to that thinking is, well, then you don't value our job. Not that they're trying to underpay him. But when one of the first questions they ask is, what are you offering? That's a problem. Because it goes without saying. This is when you go to a really fine restaurant where the prices aren't on the menu and you're like, how much is this? They're like, yeah, you can't afford it. If you're calling Dan Lanning, and if you're calling Lane Kiffin, and if you're calling Nick Saban, you don't care what the price is. You're going to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
So for Dan Lanning to say, well, what are you offering? That's problematic, because what that says is, holy shit, it's LSU. I'm taking that phone call. Well, that's not what Dan Lanning said. Hey, LSU, yeah, how much are you going to pay me? If that's in fact what happened, I think that's a huge mistake from Dan Lanning. That is the wrong answer. LSU would like to talk to LSU, because from what it appears to me through my sources, LSU essentially said, hey, intermediary, can you can you let Dan know we're interested? What's the temperature from him to us? How interested is he? And his interest level is, how much are you going to pay? That's not the right answer. Allegedly, if that's what happened.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's it. That is the wrong tack to take in that conversation. And I think you have to ask real questions about Dan Lanning's want to compete. And
yeah, I mean,
you're willing to stay somewhere that's never won a national championship and consistently in the history of college football has disappointed. At the very end, right? You finally got the 6-foot blonde. She is hot, she is ready, and you're not. That's what this comes down to. And Dan is choosing to stay in Oregon, at Oregon. That's an issue. I was stationed at Fort Polk in Leesville, Louisiana. It was known as the armpit of the Army. Only good thing was you could take a drive and get both great freshwater and saltwater fishing. There you go.
Nice.
There you go. The smell of petroleum in the air all day long, that's Baton Rouge. But where else do you want to be a college football coach? Because notice nobody's complaining about the LSU job. Nobody's like, oh, that job sucks. Who wants to smell petroleum in the air all day? Never heard that one before.
Yeah, nobody's complaining about all the extra night games that ABC gives LSU.
Yeah. Hey, Thon, I'm just happy we didn't end up with Wilcox as the head coach. Wow. Okay. I want USC to win out the rest of the season. That'd be great for Notre Dame. That would be huge for Notre Dame. Ted Lasso for LSU football. Okay. Played for Natty since 1998. Yeah, I saw the stat on Feinbaum somewhere. LSU 4, Florida 2, Oregon 2, Penn State 0. 1 Natties. 98, LSU 3, Florida 2, Oregon 0, Penn State 0. This access to the national championship, I think, is fascinating because I don't believe access or ability. Of course, you have access to the national championship at Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Will you ever be talented enough to win it?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question for Dan Lanning, and I guess this conversation is hard because I think that it's one of the only conversations we'll ever have where it comes down to, you know, how Dan wants to go about his career. I mean, honestly, I mean that's really hard to, you know, most of the time we're sitting here talking about, you know, a guy's ability to shoot a jump shot or like this guy's ability to do this or that. But like the reality is, you know, yeah, if it is true, everything you said about, you know, the answer to LSU and like, you know, him kind of sending that message that it's, you know, it's about getting paid a lot of money and everything. If that's true, yeah, he is running the risk of rubbing people the wrong way. And I would say that you haven't run the risk. You probably have rubbed people the wrong way.
You probably have.
You're probably there. However, it also needs to be said that, you know, let's say that Lane Kiffin takes the LSU job. You're telling me Florida's not calling Dan Lanning? You're telling me that other people aren't going to inquire about his availability?
No, I think the question is, if you don't take the LSU job, why are you taking the Florida job?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge question because I think. And maybe this comes down to the argument you guys we've had for 2 weeks here on the show. What's the best available job?
Right now, it's got to be LSU. I mean, I just don't even think that's.
I don't even think it's a conversation.
Yeah.
I think it is LSU. And I'm talking about when I say best available job, good pay, good environment, ability to win a national championship. I think it is LSU 1. I think it is Florida 2. And I think then it gets very interesting because, I mean, I'm going to tell you, you have no chance to win a national championship at Oklahoma State. You have no chance. Like, that's the kind of job where you're just not going to be able to get enough talent and depth in your own conference.
That's a stepping stone job, no question
Right.
about it.
So if we look at, I don't know. I still think Stanford's the third best available job. I think Penn State's probably fourth. I guess maybe I don't understand. I was told today that Arkansas is the second best available job, that it's a better job than Florida, which I think is outlandish.
Was there a reason given?
That the money that Jerry Jones is going to invest in Arkansas through his companies is going to change the game. And I don't buy it. I don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe it. I just don't.
Yeah, got to see it before we believe it.
I think it's LSU 1, Florida 2. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, if these are the only open jobs, do I want Arkansas or do I want Stanford? I think I think Stanford is a good job. I don't think you can get the talent to win a national championship. But can you get the talent to Arkansas to win a national championship?
We got money.
If you got money, sure. I think fourth is Penn State. And I think that fifth would probably be Virginia Tech. Sixth is probably UCLA. I just think it's going to take a long curve there. And that's going to be a job that the best offensive coordinator in the country gets. And it depends, because the other question here is, what other jobs open up? If Lane Kiffin gets fired at SC, now we're having a conversation. I think, that if Dabo leaves Clemson, now we're having a conversation, right? Because would it be outrageous to think Clemson after this disaster of a season?
No.
I think that's interesting. And then when we look at Eli Drinkwitz, I think Eli's getting one of these jobs. How good a job is Missouri?
Yeah, I mean he's third on the stack, depending on what Dan's willing to take and what he's not willing to take. And that's the thing of like, that's why I maintain, like, when I look at these different programs and like when all these different schools are talking about firing their coaches and stuff, I look at it and I'm like, dude, before LSU fired Brian Kelly, like, you can't tell me they didn't have a totem pole of candidates. Like, hey, Lane would be our number 1, Dan's our number 2, Drinkwitz is number 3, or whatever it might look like for them, whatever they thought. But I think that you have to be prepared to spend a lot and really get after it to get a candidate, because the thing you talk about being risk averse, I agree that hiring a guy who is really concerned about how much you're paying him definitely comes with risk, no question about it. At the same time, though, if you're LSU, you can't afford to enter yourself in this process of firing your coach to rehire a coach without being willing to make a no doubt about it, offer. I mean, you just have to put guys in a position where it's like they can't say no to get this done, because you are LSU. And so I'm of the belief that LSU, because they're such a big job, needs to be the bully in the room and needs to say, okay, hey, Lane, here we go. Like, you just came out the other day and said it ain't about money, but we all know that's a bunch of crap. Here's a ton of money. Here's a bunch of resources. Come to Baton Rouge. Let's get the job done.
I just think LSU, the minute they hire Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, or Nick Saban, their talent just explodes. You are instantly, because again, let's pretend it is Dan Lanning. I think Dan Lanning has the best offensive mind on his staff. I love Will Stein.
Yeah.
I think he's phenomenal.
And a great developer.
You're instantly in the game for the best quarterbacks in the portal, because you're going to need one at LSU. I think you are their defense has got to get better. They're so is it poor coaching or is it a lack of talent? Either one, it doesn't matter. Dan Lanning's a phenomenal flipping defensive coach. So you're going to get an influx of talent. It's what Marcus Freeman has done at Notre Dame. You instantly got better credibility with defensive recruits, portal and high schoolers. I just think LSU to me this year has looked untalented. And I think if you hired Lanning, Kiffin, or Saban, boom, talent magnet.
There was just no fire in the program.
You instantly come up, right? Yeah, I think you instantly come up. I think if you're Florida and you hire Lane Kiffin, you instantly come up. If you hire Eli Drinkwitz, you instantly raise offensive talent. Like you just get exponentially more talented. And Mario Cristobal, exponentially more talented at Miami. You were able to get Carson back. You look at just how transformative the schemes have been on both sides of the ball. Like that's the kind of boomerang. And this is again why I say it's imperative for Oregon. And I'm told they're already talking about a historically large extension with Dan Lanning at Oregon. And I am also told that Dan Lanning's kind of been like, okay, can we finish the football season here? Like, because remember, Dan Lanning isn't a Jimmy Sexton client. So I think Oregon has to find a way to hang on to Dan Lanning. That's number one. Number two, I think there's got to be probably half a dozen more jobs that open up. And then the boomerang effect of, well, Eli Drinkwitz went here, and how good a job is Ole Miss after Lane Kiffin defecated all over that place and absolutely blew it up and turned it into a perennial power in the SEC. You know how hard it is going to be to follow Lane Kiffin and his hot-ass daughter at Ole Miss? That's not a job I want. That is not a job I want. And I continue to tell you guys, and I know that you don't want to hear it. Eli Drinkwitz is one of the hottest candidates in college football because he's just doing the job. I'm really curious if let's play the what if game. If Lane Kiffin, Dan Lanning stays at Oregon, Lane Kiffin goes to Florida. Does Ole Miss call Jed Fish as soon as they can? Because I don't disagree with the commenter from before. I think Jed Fish is a candidate to move this offseason.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that's a forever job for him.
But I'm really curious. I'm really, really curious. If you're Ole Miss, would you rather have Garrett Riley or would you rather have Jed Fish?
Garrett Riley.
I think I'd rather have Garrett Riley. I would agree with that. And my biggest question is, and this was posed to me today, which one of these head coaches hires John Gruden to be either their GM or their offensive guy?
One of the teams in the SEC. He won't go to another conference. He wants to be in the SEC.
I think there's a chance that he's, and I haven't independently confirmed it, but I've heard that Arkansas and him have had some conversations on some level. What that looks like, I don't know. But again, I also think Auburn, everybody keeps talking about Auburn hiring John Gruden. That's not a risk they can take.
No.
Because I think Auburn's going to fire Hugh Freeze.
I mean,
Hugh, did we? I don't know.
Yes.
We do have that tape. Hugh Freeze today. Listen to Hugh Freeze talking. Great job, Jake. Listen to Hugh Freeze talking about his Auburn situation.
Coach, last night we got news that LSU is the third SEC team to move on from their head coach midseason here. You've advocated to be the one to, in your words, get this fixed here at Auburn. Since the win on Saturday, have you had a chance to catch up with John Cohen about where you stand and where the program stands and what you need to get it done?
No, I haven't. He was obviously excited for our win, and we celebrated together for a moment there on the field. But I don't get into those conversations. But I've been here just short of 3 years, and is the program better than when I got here on the roster? Yes. Are we close? Yes. And I've won everywhere I've been, and I believe with all my heart we're going to win big here. But my focus needs to be not on anything other than how do I help these young men grow this week as players and as young men, and how do I help our staff become even more united than they are, and they're pretty dang united. So that's where my focus lies.
Do you buy it, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the truth is that these guys have conversations with their ADs and their management, several times a week. I I think that it would be foolish to believe that Hugh Freeze hasn't had any conversations or didn't have the question was, did you have a conversation after the win? Dude, the guy has ongoing conversations with everybody in the building and everybody in the program.
The entire Auburn family.
Yeah, the entire Auburn family. Exactly. And
family.
I appreciate Hugh's ability to, play the game a little bit. And I appreciate that he's willing to say that he still believes that he can make a difference. But the reality is winning cures all problems, and they haven't won enough. And yes, you just won.
Agree.
But you, in my opinion, Auburn is waiting for you to lose again to axe you.
But I don't even think it's that. You know what I think the biggest problem for Hugh Freeze at Auburn is? The LSU job's open, the Florida job's open, the Ole Miss job's going to be open. A bunch of hot, new, sexy coaches are coming into the conference, and they're going to steal your talent. They're going to steal other people's talent, and you're going to stand still or go backward. That's the biggest problem for Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze had it in a moment where, and he's right, how many years he's been there now? Can we all honestly sit here and say that Auburn's a better program because Hugh Freeze is their head coach? Probably. But is that what anybody's trying to do, is just be a better program? No, we're not. We're trying to win national championships. And as delusional as Auburn is, and Auburn fans are, they think they have a chance to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just...
But again, if you're Auburn and you're going to fire Hugh Freeze, who are you going to go and get? Because because everyone's just waiting for the LSU domino to fall, right? Is it Lane or is it Dan? Right? That's what we're waiting for. And, if you shot in the dark Nick Saban, okay, cool. All right. I think people would be surprised by that. But we've seen stranger things happen. So I think if you're Auburn or Ole Miss or any of these clubs, you're sitting here saying, all right, is it Lane or is it Dan? And how does that impact our situation? Because if we're going to fire Hugh Freeze, who's going to be our list? We're not going after Dan Lanning. He ain't coming to Auburn, right? He ain't doing that. So we're going after, we're going after Garrett Riley. We're going after Drinkwitz. We're going after these other guys. I don't think James Franklin is a fit at Auburn. So I just don't like Auburn's a unique situation.
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem. I just don't think Auburn's another one of those programs who has access, but I don't know that they can. And it's somebody like a Scam Newton that you have to get that's over the top better to take you home.
Auburn is season wrecker program. That's what they are.
Big Ponic for $5. Oregon is either going to match or demand compensation to let Lanning go. Well, you have a buyout, right? So somebody's going to have to pay that buyout. Either way, Lanning is going to get paid. I would agree with that. Joey Harper, a member for 25 months. Appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you. How long is Vanderbilt going to be able to keep Clark Lee? I think for a long time. Because Clark Lee is not going to be a guy that'll be in the conversations for the Floridas, LSU's, Ole Miss. Sure.
Potentially.
Yeah. Ole Miss, certainly, I think. Would. There's no doubt about that. Oh, look at that. Stadium guy TCU James is here. I agree with Joe Harper. Clark Lee is a great candidate for these big jobs. He's not, though. LSU, Florida, and Auburn gets rid of Hugh Freeze. I could see Clark Lee going to Auburn. Bama isn't going to hire him. A Georgia, again, and I know every Commodore fan is probably going to crap themselves, but it's Vanderbilt football. It's not LSU. It's not Bama. It's not Georgia.
I would remind you, you talked a bunch of junk on Bama, and then they beat that ass. So
who did we add to TCU James's tombstone yesterday? I can't remember who it was, but we added somebody to your tombstone yesterday who you said nice things about, and then they died. Oh, I remember. Cooper Flagg injured his shoulder now. Guy's having a terrible start to his season. Congratulations. And if we didn't, that's who it is today. When do they act? God of death. That's right. When do they actually make a decision on Lane or Dan? They're making it now.
Yeah.
These, and I keep telling people this, and nobody believes me. Anybody who's telling you, well, Dan Lanning's not going to have these conversations, he's focused on Oregon Duck football. Yeah, you goddamn mind. You're out of your mind. You think Lane Kiffin's not talking to Florida already through Jimmy Sexton?
This is why we have agents, even when we tell the public we don't have an agent.
They're already happening. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and when Lane is sitting on Pat McAfee's show, bro, when Lane's sitting on Pat McAfee's show making Jimmy Sexton jokes, I think he's telling you without telling you that, yeah, we're there are conversations being had at a minimum.
I've never made a decision based off of money, nor will I. And
Love that.
For a lot of people, they're just like, well, money and it does this and does that. I've seen too many examples in life where money does not buy happiness. So I am never going to make a decision off of money, nor do I care about it. And
it's good to have.
Jimmy Sexton gets really mad when I say that.
He's got enough.
We got to get this. We got to get this. And I'm like, Jimmy, I don't care. And he goes, I do.
He said, that's why I'm here. Of course.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that Lane's having conversations.
Yeah, don't tell me dude's not in the market. Come on.
I'd hire Lane Kiffin tomorrow, dude. Yeah. I think he's completely remade himself, and I think at one point,
yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree with the people
please
who say
interrupt me again. Go for it. Yeah.
I agree with the people who's saying that he's got red ass Steve Spurrier vibes in him if he were to take the Florida job. I think that there are definitely shades of that in the Lane Kiffin swag.
I think Lane Kiffin wants to win every goddamn trophy available. And that's why I love the guy. I think you guys, I am stupidly competitive. Stupidly competitive. And I don't care if it's loud farting or putting a golf ball or winning a football game. I want to win everything. And I want my coach to want to win every rep in every practice, in every football game, every warm-up, every push of the I want to win it all. And if you don't, you're not my guy. And that's what I love about Lane. Lane Kiffin doesn't want to hear about it. Lane Kiffin doesn't want to talk about it. Lane Kiffin wants to win the whole damn thing. And if you don't, you're just not the right fit. And I think Lane Kiffin going to Florida I think that is the best fit. Honest to goodness, I think Dan Lanning's the best fit at LSU, and I think Lane Kiffin's the best fit at Florida. I don't even, you guys, I don't even have a doubt that if you're the SEC, those are the two that start. I think Eli Drinkwitz at Auburn is a phenomenal hire. And I think Garrett Riley to Ole Miss is a phenomenal hire. I think Clark Lee to Clemson is a phenomenal hire. Like, I'm a big believer that there are fits and certain guys and personality traits. Dan Lanning is a home run at LSU. He is an absolute home run. And then when Dan Lanning leaves, Will Stein takes over the program in Oregon. And you do not miss a beat. It's the perfect fit.
Yeah.
The perfect fit. There's nothing else to talk about. And if I'm LSU, if Nick Saban doesn't want to be my head coach, how about I pay you instead of $20 million a year? I was legitimately told today they're going to offer Nick Saban $20 million a year for 3 years.
Nick Saban is a better man than you are.
$20 million a year. They'll give you $7 million more to hire a general manager. Like, you're talking about $50, $60 million a year in coaching salaries.
That's the bottom line.
Oh, they got Nike money in Oregon, Monty. I'm going to say they have more than Nike money at LSU. But anyway, here nor there. I think then you just look at the rebound effect across college football when these jobs are opening, and you look at this guy going here and that guy going there, dude. And I think it would be crazy. But I think Matt Rule to Penn State. And I don't think, now this is just my opinion, I think Brian Hartline doesn't get the Penn State job. I think he gets the Nebraska job. And again, that's not my thinking. I've heard that if Matt Rule goes to Penn State, because I don't think Brian Hartline wants to go and coach Penn State. I don't think he wants that job. I think he would take the Nebraska job. My opinion is that Hartline would be a phenomenal fit in Lincoln, because the guy is a dog recruiter, an absolute dog recruiter.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Smith, Creole voodoo money. Yeah, dude, they got it in triplicate. Money. Competitive fish throwing at Pike Marketplace tomorrow on the show. Dude, it's so amazing down there. I took my beautiful bride and my puppy for a walk. We tend to go on walks after the show. And Mrs. Monty and I are walking through Seattle last night, and it's just so lovely to just enjoy the city sounds and the fresh air. The difference between air quality living next to the water and living in the mountains, completely different feeling. It is the fresh air in Seattle when you're not inundated with marijuana smoke is amazing. Hope Lane goes to LSU just because the locker room talk that would take place about daughter dating a player unless he's a senior. My God. Can you even imagine that? I think LSU thinks they are Bama. Dan Lanning is not leaving for LSU. Oregon's a better job. Anybody telling you Oregon's a better job than LSU don't know ball. I'm guessing you're an Oregon fan, and I get it, my guy.
With all due respect,
I get it. I don't think in anybody's universe that Oregon's a bad job, but there's Oregon, and then you're talking about LSU, who's on a completely different plane than Oregon. It just, you don't have access to the talent that you need. It has plagued Oregon for years, and everybody keeps, and again, I'll just keep saying this. Oh, we got Nike money, Monty. Okay, everybody's got Nike money. All of the major programs, money is not, unless you're, who's a cheap, like it's what keeps Oklahoma State from being significant in even wiping their own ass, because they don't spend money on toilet paper. They cut coaches' salaries. Like you cannot be Iowa State and tell me that you're a better program or on par with, because you're not. You're not. And I look at certain jobs in this country, Ohio State, Notre Dame, certainly LSU, Bama, Georgia, Oregon. Money is not a conversation. Hey man, I need new Louis leather for my kids' lockers. Okay, great. Give me some dimensions. I'll have my guy show up tomorrow. Done. Right? Like it just doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. How many times do we joke about SRTs at Georgia? They're legitimately driving $100,000 cars. Like the money's not the issue, dude. Like, yeah, it's access to the talent that's required to win a national championship. You don't have it at Oregon because Oregon's in Eugene. The University of Oregon is in Eugene, Oregon. I think it's the single biggest issue.
Yeah. And he's got good recruiting classes. It's just not, it's just not good enough.
How wild would it be for James Franklin you would want James Franklin? Would Jim Knowles go back to Stillwater? I'm begging you at some point, aim higher. You're talking about wanting a coach who can't beat the best opponents he plays. You're wanting Mike Gundy 2.0. Like, why do you? He can't win big games. He cannot win big games. Hartline would look good at Oregon too. Maybe. You know. King of Thailand. Hello, sir. Boy, you're just weeks away now, aren't you? Oak State James, I can see Franklin and Stillwater. Oof. Weed, salt, air, and fish aroma. Seattle rocks. Just, I hate that. I shouldn't say this out loud. Knowing the vagrants that are, knowing the thousands of you watching the show right now, I shouldn't say this out loud. I hate the smell of marijuana. I cannot stand walking to, and here in Seattle, they vape it. They have it in these atomizer machine things. It's brutal. I cannot stand it. It just, you know. Steel book. Who's got better talent composite right now? Who gives a flying flip? What does that got to do with anything? Quite legitimate talent composite. So let me get this right. You think because Oregon has a higher scored pool of talent, that's a better job? No, what that tells you is Brian Kelly didn't do his job. That's what that tells you. And I just will always go back to this when people run out QBR for the first 7 snaps of a game. Understand how to use information. Right? PFF. And I love my guys at Pro Football Focus. When you look at their talent, the scope of their talent, and the way they grade talent. The best part about this conversation, and I think I was looking at this morning, I think Oregon is 6th, and I think LSU is 7th. Guys are like, and I can look it up, but I think there's almost no separation between the two. And this is strictly, and here's the other problem that guys don't want to talk about, is this is strictly recruiting base. Nobody wins national championships with high school kids. See Ohio State last year with Will Howard and Caleb Downs. Like, you don't win national championships because of your talent composite. And if you did, Georgia and Alabama are almost always number 1 or 2. It's always like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Texas. The talent, I'm not even going to get into it. The talent composite thing is such it tells me you don't understand the difference in what makes or breaks football programs. If talent composite was such an overwhelming metric, why is Oregon so mediocre this year? Why are you unable? And here's the numbers that you don't want to talk about. These are the numbers that
Oregon fan, you make it too easy, bro. You really do. I mean,
this is not an argument you want to have, because it doesn't matter how much talent
y'all got some skeletons in the closet with these stats, and I hate to do this to you guys, but
and I'm just asking, if you have all this talent and you have all of this talent composite, why on defense do you wear a suppository, my guy? Like, you can't rush the quarterback. Oh, but Monty, our talent composite. Bro, quack, quack, bitches.
Okay, so before you drop the stat, right, I just want to put this in perspective so that the stat has full perspective. So this is what Oregon season's been. Everything leading up to the Penn State game, right? So the Penn State game, the lead up to that was Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Oregon State. 4 ass teams. Really, really ass teams. We all agree on that. Then you play Penn State to the wire at their place. You win in overtime, great interception. Okay, cool. Terrible decision by average ass Aller and his, broken ass body.
Because he's average ass.
So you beat Penn State. You get dominated by the next best team you play, which is Indiana. Then you light up Rutgers and have an average ass performance against Wisconsin. So the truth is you may be number 6 in the country right now. But and again, I live in Eugene. I see this team week in and week out. I have people inside the walls there, inside the university. We know a bunch of people, right? Like
family.
We got a family. And the reality is, and I hate saying this because I do like me some Dan Lanning. I do. You have lost to the best team that you played. Indiana is superior to Penn State in almost every way. And so then what's going to happen is Monty's about to drop this stat on you, which I already know what stat it is, and you're not going to like it. The reality is you're going to talk about how Oregon leads the nation in the least amount of TFLs, and they don't get sacks, and they don't get pressure. And because of that, when they played a quarterback who actually could read a defense and put the ball where he needed to beat cover 2 and to beat base defense consistently, they lost because you couldn't stop the run and he was throwing over the top on you, which is exactly what we saw at Autzen, where allegedly it never rains. So I just look at the schedule and I'm like, hey, yeah, cool. You can die on your hill of Oregon's the best job ever and everyone loves Eugene. But the reality is Eugene's a tiny speck of sand, and Dan Lanning has taken them about as far as he can take them without more help. That's the reality of the situation. And I like Dan. Dude, I honestly, I loved the Penn State, experience. That was incredible. I watched that game with a bunch of other people. Everyone's all fired up. It was amazing. But notice the hype died down real quick after you got that ass beat by Mr. Google guy. That's the reality of it, dude. So keep bringing out stats about talent composites and QBRs and all this nonsense, dude. I'm telling you.
You're living and dying. You're living and dying on high school kids, which is not how you win championships. And the stats that I'm going to show you about, or I'm going to tell you about, and these are readily available anywhere you want. If you have all this talent, and you've got the talent composite, which doesn't mean dick, then why do you have 13 sacks, 13 sacks and 41 pass defended? Do you know that 41 passes defended, the next closest is Purdue at 33? Well,
Monty, doesn't that mean we're playing great defense?
What that means is you don't sack the quarterback. You are third least quarterback pressures in the Big Ten. And you are third least in sacks in the Big Ten. And so the quarterback has all day to stand back there and throw the football. So your secondary has to defend passes. And again, Mr. Steel book guy, you're getting offended. I don't take it personally with Oregon. I'm not a fan of Oregon. What I'm telling you is there's a reason you don't have championships. I talked about this on the show yesterday. There's a reason that the Bellattis and the Chip Kellys and the Mario Cristobals didn't win championships. And Chip Kelly had more assets available to him with Bagman than your guy Dan Lanning has now legally. The bottom line is it's Joey Harrington. It's Marcus Mariota. It's Dante Moore. You have amazing talent. You just don't have enough of it across the board because it's not your number ones that win national championships. Brian Kelly is learning this the hard way. What wins you national championships? Talent composite, Monty. No. Depth. Your 4s, your 5s, your 6. It's not the top 25 in percent. It's not the bottom 25%. It's the middle 50% that wins you a national championship. And Oregon has a historical problem with depth. That's the single biggest, most consistent thing at Oregon. It's not that you don't have stars. It's not that you don't have the Kayvon Thibodeaux of the world. It's not that you don't have the Harringtons, the Mariotas, the Gabriels, the Moores. It's that you don't have the fourth string corner making an interception. You don't have the edge rusher who's filling in for somebody. But it turns out that, and this is the truth of the truth, the third string edge rusher making a sack in the fourth quarter of a game to get you into the conference championship, that's the guy who wins you national championship. Everybody wants to talk about 5 stars, Monty. This kid, Jimmy, with a small cock, but he's got long arms, 5-star recruit.
You're filling in for somebody.
Yeah, they don't win you. That doesn't mean anything because if your coaches don't develop them, what is a 5-star recruit? So congratulations on your talent composite. And what is that going to get you this year? Because this is the truth. And you don't have to like it, but it's the reality of college football. The guy they hire at LSU is going to buy an F-load of talent, and they're going to compete for an SEC championship next year. And if that's Dan Lanning, you're going to have a very difficult time keeping the bar as high as it is. And the only way you do that is if Will Stein stays and is your head coach, which I think would be a home run. Other than that, it just doesn't.
Oregon fan is not unique in the sense of passion. You guys get all pissed off just like every other fan base does. But what you can't answer is why is it if your what is he saying here? Your blue chip ratio of talent or your talent composite or
so your blue chip ratio, the percentage of players on your team that are good enough matters? No. Guy, stop with the high school kid. I get worn out on this because you don't want to have a real world conversation. You're hanging on to high school recruiting. That's what you're living and dying on. Who's the best team in the country right now? Go ahead, say it. It's Ohio State. They have a mix of portal guys and blue chip caliber players. What's Indiana got? Indiana's got a phenomenal amount of portal players, right? I don't know how to make you guys and you're the Penn State fan who told me that James Franklin was never getting fired. Look at Texas Tech. Look at who's the best team. Look at Georgia Tech. Look at Miami. Look at the best teams in every conference and look how transformative the portal was for them. That's where you win and lose championships right now. And I just can't, I cannot help but think that if Indiana's not the best example of this, right? If you look at guys and you look at who's their best wide receiver, probably Elijah Sarrett, JMU transfer, right? And now this is his second season in Indiana. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza, who I think has a legitimate chance to win the O'Brien and the Heisman. Fernando Mendoza was a Cal Bear until this year when he became a Indiana Hoosier. Oh, he's a blue chipper, Monty. He's a transfer portal guy. That's how you win. So keep blowing smoke about blue chippers. I don't
And
care.
by the way, again, the question still remains. You're asking us to answer questions. Why is it that if you have all this talent, you got your doors blown off against Ohio State? And you were not able to match the physicality of Indiana in your own building.
It's stupid shit like this. I just explained this to you. You have a guy in Dante Moore who is from the portal, could win the Heisman, and it doesn't happen because you don't have a defense. You don't have a defense. You can't sack the quarterback. And you're asking, Oregon has taken 2 Heisman finalists out of the portal recently. Woohoo!
Nobody said they sucked in the portal.
What's that got to do with anything? You have to have a mix and depth. I'm done talking to you today. If you want to have a conversation, I'm here for it. I'm not going to keep playing your... It's so ridiculous. Yeah, it's my fault. Why do I feed the hyenas? Why do I do it? I think one of the things that's amazing is Lane Kiffin is the #1 candidate for every open job.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys understand the transformation that this cat has undergone? I was saying this earlier, and I think it's really worth pointing out. He and Steve Sarkisian took the exact same path to the exact same place. Flamed out at USC, had personal problems, went to Nick Saban, took a head coaching job, and now they're competing for national championships.
Up and to the right.
And their talent composites are amazing. I think it's the transformation and the renovation of Lane Kiffin's reputation. I don't know that we've ever seen it in college football before. It is what I think Ed O would love to do, and I just don't think he'll ever get the chance. I think it's what Bill Belichick would love to do, and he'll never get the chance. I think John Gruden would love to do it. I don't know that he'll ever get the chance. If I am Ed Orgeron, if I am John Gruden, go be a coordinator. Take the Chip Kelly route. Go be a coordinator. Go be an offensive coordinator at LSU. Go be a defensive coordinator at wherever. Go be a coordinator because that's your quickest route back to salvation. And I think it is incredible the money that when you look at this right here, $800,000 a month. Have you guys looked at coaches' buyouts lately? It is off the chisel when you look at these numbers. And they're all mediocre ass coaches. Like you look at James Franklin and Epstein Island, the Knuckle Deep Boys are paying him $49.7 million not to coach. He was a bad hire when they hired him. And again, I think there are a lot of issues at Penn State. I think where Penn State is, I think a lot of people don't like playing at Penn State. They're going to pay him $49.7 million not to coach.
Mm.
They're going to pay Billy Napier $21 million not to coach. Mike Gundy had a $15 million buyout. They're going to pay Pittman and Foster and all these dudes not to coach ball games. Like, I don't care who you are on this list. Trent Dilfer getting $2.4 million not to coach. Trent Bray getting $4 million not to coach.
Yeah, I need to get into this line of work, dude. Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should stop doing the show and start a college football coaching pipeline.
Is this just where we are in college football now? Is this just because we're so impatient? You look at LSU. Could they pretty easily have given Brian Kelly the rest of the season? They could have. But I think he was doing so much damage internally, you had to let him go. But could they have just let him ride? They could have. But they're willing to pay him $800,000 a month not to coach. And after this season, they're willing to pay him and his staff over $100 million not to coach their team anymore. I think that's just the reality of college football. You have to win championships. You not only have to win, you have to be competing for championships. It's good money if you can get it. And I think you're all well aware that you get hired as a football coach to get fired.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball manager, football coach, hockey coach, basketball coach, you get hired to get fired. But is this almost hostage taking now?
Basically, I mean, I mean, again, it goes back to exactly what you said about, Dan Lanning's alleged response to LSU. Hey, what are you willing to pay me? And this concept of, what's the buyout? What money am I going to be making? Because, for these coaches, especially the ones that are still employed, getting, uprooting and leaving the pipeline you've already built in your program to go to another program. Even if that opportunity is a better opportunity, there's still inherent risk in that, right? I mean, you still got to go and do a job. You still got to go out and get all these kids to agree to come to Baton Rouge and do those things, or Tallahassee or wherever it might be. And, I think that it is getting to a point where it's not sustainable. I mean, you can't be in a place where you make a bad hire anymore, because the hiring, costs at these, top tier opportunities, these quote unquote blue chip opportunities, you're paying a ton of money. So if you miss on Brian Kelly, you're paying $100 million to get out of it. That's the price that you're going to pay for making that mistake, because it was a mistake. It was a bad hire. So now we get to play the game at LSU where we get to say, okay, cool, we made a mistake. Now who is the candidate that is the no doubt about it, if it flames, no one blames us hire? That's Lane Kiffin, right? That's Lane Kiffin right now. That's, you hire Lane Kiffin, it doesn't work out 5 years from now, no one's going to blame you. Everyone's going to blame Lane, and it's going to be on him. The Dan Lanning thing, I think it would be an 80-20 proposition. 20% on you because of the lack of experience overall in his career, being just 39. And also he hasn't been in the SEC as a head coach. He's off the Nick Saban tree, obviously, and obviously has experience that way, but he's not a 60-year-old person still coaching. He doesn't have just this plethora of experience. And so that's why I say, I do think it's the state of affairs in college football, but eventually the ability to go and get these jobs is going to get to a point where only the top 3% of candidates should even be in these conversations. Like the Eli Drinkwitz of the world shouldn't even be in the LSU conversation. Not that he is, but just, any of these top tier national championship hopefuls shouldn't even, and it's no offense to him, but unless you've been in the CFP, or unless you've been at a place where it's like, no question about it, there are limitations keeping you from it, you would be there. I just don't think you should be in consideration, because schools can't miss anymore.
And I think so many schools now, with the way the education funding has changed, and the absolute destruction of the Department of Education, and there's just so many challenges. I don't know how you have the governor of Louisiana making this decision. That's where we're at in college football. And I look at this, I look at somebody like a Penn State paying James Franklin, LSU paying Brian Kelly. That doesn't matter. They have so much money. What I think is shocking is this trend now is it's getting so deep into college football that it is the Va-Techs, it's the G5s, it's the Oregon States. Think about how much money Oregon State hasn't made in the last 3 years. You think about how much money goes into this sport. It's mind-numbing. And the money they spend to recruit, the money they spend to portal, the money they spend to make sure that kids are passing their classes at BYU, at Notre Dame, these institutions where education comes well beyond and the difficulty in that. And I just think it's so difficult to compete if you're not willing to pay these buyouts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so difficult to pay these buyouts.
But hasn't it just been raising overall, right? I mean, we had a house settlement, right, with rev sharing with players. So that's 22 million right there. Then you've got the, let's just be reasonable and say, 13 mil a year, 12 mil a year for your head coach per year. And then you've got the cost of his staff, the family, of people that help coach the program. And then you've got all the other added side benefits, meaning private jets, food, events, hotels, just the cost of doing business type line items on your budget every year. And so I just don't think that people understand yet. When I say people, I mean institutions. I don't think that the big dogs in college football until recently, right, have begun to understood that they can't make a mistake in who they hire. And when you do hire someone, you have to be absolutely sure that that's the guy and that you're committed to him for 5 years. Because I'm a little past this, like when we had all our debates over Matt Rule's quality. That's all cool that Matt Rule, third year with Matt Rule, is supposed to be, just incredible. And, my God, would never, it's just amazing. And that's when things take off. But if you're paying these guys this much money, aren't you essentially paying for, several CFP appearances and 1 or 2 natties over a 10-year period?
Jake, look at the money those scumbags in Ann Arbor lost on Jim Harbaugh. I mean, you think about the fact they dropped this appeal. The guy who is a complete POS scumbag that bailed on you for the NFL, and you begged him to stay, and you were going to make him the highest paid coach in the history of college football, allegedly, and he still left. And now you're stuck with Sharon Moore, who can't develop talent and doesn't make you better, and you're paying him, and it's another level 1 violation, multiple level 1 like, you think about the money
again and again and again,
and think about how much money you were supposed to make when you won a national championship. Look how much money they've lost because they won a national championship.
Gonna go and say you're in the red there, guys.
And Jabba the Manual, still the athletic director there. Even though you've had another major scandal, and there's still other major scandals you're dealing with. Those are the mistakes you can't make because you just don't recover from that. And then you start getting into, the Bryce Underwoods of the world. Brian Kelly lost Bryce Underwood at LSU, cost him his job. I mean, you think about how good LSU staff is at developing young quarterbacks like that, or at least through Brian Kelly's tenure. And you look at the absolute debauchery, the embarrassment, the absolute scumbags in Ann Arbor. And if they lose Bryce Underwood to the portal, was any of that worth it? Was any of that worth it? Right. I can't even, I can't fathom the money and the time and the absolute effort that you put into that operation and how much then money and time it costs you. It's remarkable. But I think this is just the economics of college football now. And the multi-thousands of you watching the show, like, do you want your teams paying buyouts? I will only talk about my fandom at Notre Dame. I am not a Marcus supporter. I think that everybody wants to tell me how amazing he is. And, oh my God. Nah, bro. Marcus Freeman is a guy that is a good coach. But at Notre Dame, are we just looking to be a good football team? Or are we looking to win national championships? I think people at Notre Dame are good competing, not winning.
Would you say that Marcus Freeman at this time is better than Dan Lanning is? as a coach.
I don't believe he is. I think Dan Lanning has his shit together far more than Marcus does. I think my biggest complaint with Marcus Freeman is I think on a lot of situations offensively, he doesn't know up from down. And I think that when you look at the way that, again, this is the same thing I say about Sharon Moore at Michigan. Sharon Moore is lost in the sauce in a lot of pressure moments where he's got to come up with a quick adjustment. Sharon Moore can't do it. And you're looking at, there were multiple plays in the USC game for Michigan where Bryce just ignored the play call. And it's been talked about a lot where he just didn't run the play that was put in. What did Sharon Moore do about that? Nothing. Because what can Sharon Moore say to Bryce Underwood? Nothing. Marcus Freeman is so out of touch offensively. And now, when our secondary can't cover, you just have to ask yourself, this guy's good. Is he the reason we got to the college football playoff? Has to be. He's the head coach. And I'm not going to question that. But what happens when we don't get to the college football playoff? Because we're going to lose again. We're going to lose again. And I would remind you that this guy is tied to Notre Dame for 5.5 more years now. Whether you want him to be or not. He signed a contract, I'm pretty sure it was December 15th. He signed a 6-year extension. What's going to happen when we lose at Pitt? What's going to happen when we lose to Boston College or Navy or Syracuse or Stanford? None of those games should be competitive. Those should be 17 to 20-point wins for Notre Dame. But what's going to happen when it's not? Because it won't be. Hope I'm wrong. But yeah. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see, exactly how those things play out. And you look at the way that these coaches, and there's a bunch of them, like you look at a guy like Lincoln Riley. He's never been able to put a top-tier defense on the field. Never been able to put a top-tier defense on the field. And it's shocking because you look at Brent Venables at OU. He's got a top-tier defense. He had a Heisman caliber quarterback until he got hurt. And the losses have piled up. But you look at Kurt Cignetti. Cignetti's probably got the best defense in the country right now, or one of. And he's got a Heisman candidate in Fernando Mendoza. And their offense is super dynamic. I look at Alabama, top-tier defense, super dynamic offense. And I go back and I say, look at LSU. Not a good defense, a bad defense, and not dynamic offensively. I look at Oregon. Really dynamic quarterback in Dante Moore. You wonder a little bit about the wide receiver talent. Are you 6, 7, 8 deep? Probably not. But the defense, it's shocking how easily Indiana pushed them around up front.
Yep. Stop physical them.
Shocking. Right. And I look at Marcus Freeman. How are you unable to play zone coverage? And you go back to the Miami game. They could not play zone defense. Just can't cover out of zone. Don't understand it. And it's not that Xavier Watts isn't here because you supposedly upgraded. But it just, my point is, you're paying these guys a lot of money. They need to win every year. They're not gonna. But if you lose, your name better be Kirby Smart. If you lose, you better have gotten a ton of talent out of the portal and not talked about how Jesus Christ is running your organization. Right, Dabo? I mean, that Dabo said,
in God's name, image, and likeness.
We built this in Jesus' name, image. Like,
we built this program on NIL.
Yep. Well, Cade Klubnik was counting on Jesus, like thoughts and prayers, bud. And how did that work?
Probably different than what you're thinking, though.
Right? Like, I just think it's very interesting that when you get into these conversations, you tend to find your way and you don't really find your way. Oh, look, Ferris is back.
What is this burner number 871, Ferris?
Casuals complain about passing yardage when Michigan got a historically good. Are you out of your mind?
Yes, dude, he is. This is Ferris we're talking about, bro. Yes.
Bryce Underwood is going to transfer.
How do we get 2 guys?
And it's not because of the passing offense, dipshit. It's because they won't let him run. They won't let him be a true RPO court. He's ignoring play calls. He is ignoring play calls. Like, he's on tape waving off the sideline. He's on tape. He's doing this, and he's like, you just see him be like, what are you? To his, amazing head coach, multi-time level 1 violator. Get out of here, dude. We built this Clemson program on Christian rock music. I believe that's true. Well, I wonder what 3i Atlas talent composite is.
Yeah,
how about
right?
this thing? Do you guys really think it's a UFO? Do you really think that 3i Atlas is an alien spacecraft?
What I really think is nobody wants to talk about it in an official capacity, which tells you there's something going on. I don't know if that means it's alien or if it's, if there's some if
it's headed directly for Earth.
Yeah, like if we're all gonna die in a month or what, I don't know. I don't know, dude.
What do you think it is?
I think that there's something going on there that's not of this world that people are not ready to tell the public yet. That's what I think. And I don't know. I genuinely don't have an opinion on if that means it's alien or what, but I'm just telling you there's something there that is like, whoa, we can't be bringing this up on Fox News. Right? We can't be doing press hearings in front of a landscaping garage talking about 3i Atlas and, what it's going to do to the planet. We can't be doing that. We're not doing that. So I don't know. My question is, at what point does Elon start making statements about what's going on in space since he's the rocket guy? Like when does he get involved since everyone's ripping NASA at this point?
I don't know, man. I think 3i Atlas is fascinating. I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole on it. And from what I understand, Phil Knight has so much money that it's going to land at Autzen because he's got all that Nike money. He's going to give the aliens new shoes, and they're going to take Dante Moore and head for the hills.
But listen, this is the most important question right here. 3i Atlas is interviewing for the open LSU in Florida job, okay?
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Ferris says RPO is literally run pass option. It's not the RPO that's the problem.
Are you new to this?
It's when they call another passing play. He clearly wanted to get out of the pocket, and they didn't allow that. They want him to be a pocket passer. Go away. Seriously, yes, please just go away. You're insufferable. Your lack of, it was a lone wolf, Monty. Yeah, it turned out that wasn't true. Like your bullshit is just so burned out. And you wonder why you consistently have your YouTube accounts banned from the platform.
He's on burner number 50 at this point.
I'm serious. Like, how many accounts of yours have gotten banned?
Ferris number 10 and, Ferris Stan and Ferris the stadium guy and Ferris Michigan fan. Like, come on, dude.
And inevitably you turn into such a red ass. It's like Wasikowski, why we don't read a lot of his comments, because he just insults people constantly. Why would we want that kind of energy on our show? Oh, we don't. Instead, dude that abides says, Ferris, how do you always come in here when I make the rare choice to try to defend Monty versus Michigan just to amp him up? Yeah, Eggy. I'd rather talk about 100 5-star lizard alien. Well, listen, Monty, I got to tell you, that talent composite on 3i Atlas, they've got a lizard.
The blue chip talent composite on 3i Atlas, though.
They've got this lizard that runs a 2.640, and let me tell you something. Dante's just got to get it out in front of him, and it's over, bud. You ever seen a lizard run a 2.640. I mean, those front legs are chopping like a corn combine, dude.
Mika, a big boo.
Bro is running a 1 second 40 on 3i Atlas.